Hey everyone, before we get into what's happening in Florida right now, I need you to subscribe to this channel immediately. If you're a homeowner struggling with insurance costs, if you're watching your property value collapse, if you're dealing with rising costs and wondering how you're going to survive, this channel is for you. We're breaking down the policies destroying homeownership across America every single week, giving you real information about what's happening and what you can do about it. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's talk about the disaster unfolding in DeSantis Florida. All right, let's be very clear about what's happening right now. Florida's housing market isn't just cooling off. It's not just experiencing a correction. It's crashing, and homeowners are being absolutely devastated. And this isn't some unpredictable natural disaster. This is a direct result of policy failures by DeSantis and years of ignoring obvious warning signs. Homeowners who did everything right, who saved for years, who bought homes believing in the Florida dream, are now facing financial ruin. And DeSantis has no real plan to fix it. Let's start with the insurance crisis, because this is the issue that's making Florida homeownership literally impossible for many people. Homeowners insurance in Florida has become either catastrophically expensive or completely unavailable. We're not talking about small increases. We're talking about insurance premiums that have tripled, quadrupled, even quintupled in just a few years. Homeowners who are paying $3,000 a year for insurance are now being quoted $15,000 or $20,000. Some are being quoted even more than that. And these aren't mansions on the beach. These are ordinary middle-class homes. Major insurance companies have completely pulled out of Florida. State Farm, Farmers, AAA, these big national insurers looked at the risk in Florida and said, we can't do this anymore. We're leaving. The companies that remain are charging absolutely insane premiums because they know homeowners are desperate and have no other options. If you have a mortgage, you must have insurance. It's not optional. So homeowners are trapped. They have to pay whatever the insurance companies demand or they lose their homes. The state created Citizens Property Insurance as an insurer of last resort and is completely overwhelmed. It was supposed to be a temporary backstop for people who genuinely couldn't get private insurance. Now it's covering well over 1 million properties and growing rapidly. And here's the terrifying part. Citizens doesn't have anywhere near enough money to pay claims if a major hurricane hits Florida. If a Category 4 or 5 hurricane makes landfall in a populated area, Citizens could be bankrupted. And then what happens to all those homeowners who thought they had insurance? They're just out of luck. Their homes get destroyed, and there's no money to rebuild. DeSantis' response to the insurance crisis has been pathetic. He's tried to blame it on lawsuits, claiming that Florida has too much insurance fraud and frivolous litigation. So the legislature passed tort reform, making it harder for homeowners to sue insurance companies when they wrongfully deny claims. Did that lower insurance rates? No. Insurance companies took the legal protections and kept raising rates anyway, because the real problem isn't lawsuits. The real problem is climate change and the increasing risk of catastrophic hurricanes and flooding in Florida. But DeSantis won't address climate change. He's literally banned state agencies from using the term climate change in official communications. He's rolled back environmental protections. He's continued approving massive development in vulnerable coastal areas and flood zones. He's done everything possible to pretend climate change doesn't exist. And now Florida homeowners are paying the price for his denial. Insurance companies aren't stupid. They look at the actual data on sea level rise, hurricane intensity, flooding risk, and they're making business decisions based on reality, not DeSantis' political ideology. Now, let's talk about what's happening to property values, because this is devastating for homeowners in a different way. For years, Florida property values skyrocketed. People who bought homes saw their values increase dramatically. That looked great on paper. But now the market is crashing in many areas. Property values are dropping, sometimes precipitously. Homes that were worth $600,000 2 years ago are now worth $400,000. Homes that sold for $400,000 are now worth $300,000 or less. Why is this happening? Multiple factors. First, the insurance crisis is making Florida homes less desirable. Potential buyers look at those insurance costs and realize they can't afford to own in Florida. Second, the broader housing market is cooling as interest rates have risen. Third, there's growing awareness of climate risk. People are starting to understand that coastal Florida properties are genuinely at risk from sea level rise and hurricanes, and they don't want to buy into that risk. Fourth, property taxes have been increasing to cover the cost of hurricane damage and infrastructure needs. The total cost of owning a home in Florida has become prohibitive, so you have homeowners who bought at the peak of the market who are now underwater on their mortgages. They owe more than their home is currently worth. If they need to sell, they can't. They're trapped. Some are walking away from their mortgages, letting homes go into foreclosure, because it doesn't make financial sense to keep paying for a home that's worth less than they owe and costs a fortune to insure. Even homeowners who own their properties outright, who don't have mortgages, are struggling. You still have to pay property insurance, which is skyrocketing. You still have to pay property taxes, which are increasing. You still have to maintain the property. For retirees on fixed incomes, these costs are absolutely crushing. People who retire to Florida thinking they were set financially are discovering they can't afford to stay in their homes. The property tax situation deserves special attention because it's hitting homeowners hard. Florida has a homestead exemption that provides some protection for primary residences, which is good. But as property values increase, so did property tax bills, even with the homestead cap. And now local governments are raising millage rates because they need revenue to deal with infrastructure problems, hurricane recovery, and all the costs associated with Florida's rapid population growth that happened under DeSantis. So homeowners are getting squeezed from every direction. Insurance costs are skyrocketing. Property taxes are going up. Home values are dropping. Maintenance costs are increasing because everything is more expensive. If you need to make repairs or improvements to your home, the costs are dramatically higher than they were just a few years ago. Hurricane damage that needs to be repaired is incredibly expensive because contractors are overwhelmed and materials costs are up. For homeowners on fixed incomes, this is catastrophic. Imagine you're retired. You bought your home 20 years ago. You paid off your mortgage. You thought you were financially secure. Now your insurance goes from $4,000 a year to $16,000. Your property taxes go up $2,000. You had hurricane damage that insurance only partially covered, so you're out of pocket $15,000 for repairs. Where do you get that money? You're on Social Security. You have some savings, but they're supposed to last the rest of your life. Do you drain your retirement account to stay in your home? Do you take out a reverse mortgage? Do you sell and leave Florida entirely? This is happening to tens of thousands of Florida homeowners right now. Real people who did everything they were supposed to do are being financially destroyed by circumstances they couldn't control and policies that failed them. And DeSantis' response has been inadequate to the point of being insulting. He keeps talking about how great Florida's economy is doing. How many people are moving to Florida? How many jobs are being created? But if you're a homeowner facing financial ruin from insurance costs, how does that help you? If your property value has dropped $100,000, what good is Florida's economic growth? If you're being forced to sell your home and leave the state because you can't afford to stay, DeSantis' happy talk about the Florida economy is meaningless. There's also the issue of HOA fees, which are increasing dramatically in many communities. Homeowners associations are facing the same insurance crisis as individual homeowners, but for the common areas and shared structures they're responsible for. HOA insurance costs have skyrocketed, and those costs get passed on to homeowners through increased HOA fees. In some condo buildings and communities, HOA fees have doubled or tripled. For homeowners already struggling with insurance and property taxes, this is another massive cost increase they can't afford. And here's something particularly cruel. Homeowners who want to sell and get out are discovering that buyers aren't willing to pay what they need to get. The market has turned against sellers. Properties are sitting on the market for months. Sellers are having to drop prices significantly to attract buyers. Even then, many deals are falling through because buyers can't get affordable insurance, which means they can't get mortgages, which means the sale collapses. So homeowners are trapped. They can't afford to stay because the costs are too high, but they can't afford to leave because they can't sell for enough to pay off their mortgage and move somewhere else. This is a genuine crisis, and it's affecting people across the economic spectrum. It's not just low-income homeowners. Middle-class families upper middle class professionals, even wealthy retirees are struggling with this. The psychological toll is enormous. Homeownership is supposed to provide security and stability. It's supposed to be the foundation of building wealth and achieving the American dream. But Florida homeowners are watching that dream collapse. They're stressed, anxious, losing sleep over how they're going to pay their bills. They're making impossible choices. Do I pay my insurance, or do I risk going without coverage? Do I drain my savings to stay in my home, or do I walk away and destroy my credit? These are nightmare scenarios, and they're real for hundreds of thousands of Floridians. The impact on communities is also severe. When homeowners are forced to sell or walk away from properties, neighborhoods decline. Vacant homes and foreclosures bring down property values for everyone around them. Communities lose stability when people are constantly moving in and out. Schools lose students. Local businesses lose customers. The social fabric breaks down. And let's be clear about who's benefiting from this crisis. Corporate investors and wealthy out-of-state buyers. They're swooping in to buy distressed properties at reduced prices from homeowners who are desperate to sell. They're paying cash. So they don't need mortgages and don't care as much about insurance costs because they can self-insure or build those costs into their investment calculations. They're buying single-family homes and converting them to rentals, or they're buying condos as investment properties. So you have this perverse situation where the homeownership crisis is accelerating the transfer of housing from individuals and families to corporate investors. Homeownership rates in Florida are declining. More and more housing is being converted to rentals owned by corporations. This is exactly the opposite of what we should want in a healthy housing market and a healthy society. DeSantis could have prevented much of this if he had taken climate change seriously years ago, if he had required stronger building codes, if he had restricted development in the most vulnerable areas, if he had invested in climate adaptation and resilience, if he had reformed insurance regulation in ways that actually help homeowners instead of insurance companies, the crisis wouldn't be this bad. But he didn't do any of those things. He chose to prioritize developers and his political ideology over the well-being of Florida homeowners. And even now, when the crisis is undeniable, he's not proposing real solutions. He's not calling for massive state investment in insurance reform. He's not proposing a state-backed reinsurance program that would actually lower costs for homeowners. He's not implementing serious climate adaptation measures. He's not restricting development in high-risk areas. He's not doing any of the things that would actually help. Instead, he's doing small symbolic gestures and hoping the problem somehow goes away. It's not going away. It's getting worse. Every hurricane season brings more damage and higher costs. Every year brings higher sea levels and more flooding. Every year brings more insurance companies leaving or raising rates. The trajectory is clear, and it's catastrophic for Florida homeowners. For anyone watching this who owns a home in Florida, you need to be thinking very seriously about your situation. Look at your total cost of ownership honestly. Insurance, property taxes, HOA fees, maintenance, everything. Can you actually afford those costs going forward? If insurance costs double again, can you handle that? If your property value keeps dropping, what does that mean for your financial situation? Consider your options. If you're thinking about selling, understand that the market is difficult, but properties are still selling. Don't wait until you're in crisis to make a decision. If you're staying, make sure you have adequate emergency savings for unexpected costs. Look into every possible way to reduce your insurance costs, like hardening your home against hurricanes, raising your deductible if you can afford the risk, shopping around aggressively for coverage. Get involved politically. Demand that your elected officials take this crisis seriously. Support candidates who have real plans to address climate change, insurance reform, and the homeownership crisis. Hold DeSantis and the legislature accountable for their failures. This is not inevitable. This is a result of policy choices, and different choices can produce different outcomes. For everyone else watching, understand that what's happening in Florida can happen in other states. Climate change is affecting insurance markets nationwide. Coastal areas everywhere are seeing similar problems. Fire risk in the West is creating insurance crises in California and other states. This is a national issue that needs national attention and federal solutions. But it starts with holding state leaders accountable for their failures. And in Florida, that means holding Ron DeSantis accountable. Florida is crashing. Homeowners can't survive this without significant policy changes and real leadership. DeSantis has failed them completely, and the consequences are devastating. This is his legacy, a housing market and homeownership crisis that's destroying the dreams and financial security of hundreds of thousands of Florida families. Thanks for watching. If this video opened your eyes to what's really happening to Florida homeowners, share everywhere. Let people know the truth. Drop a comment about your experiences as a homeowner in Florida or anywhere else dealing with similar issues. And please hit that subscribe button, because we're going to keep covering this crisis and demanding accountability from the politicians who created it. Together we can fight for change. See you in the next one.